What if I told you that the most terrifying predators to ever walk this planet weren't dinosaurs, weren't sharks, and weren't even mammals? What if the true monsters were creatures you wouldn't think twice about crushing under your shoe today? Imagine standing in a prehistoric forest. The air is so thick with oxygen, you can almost taste it. Above you, something blocks out the sun. Not a bird, but a dragonfly with a wingspan wider than your arms stretched out. You hear rustling in the leaves behind you. You turn. A centipede the length of your car is crawling toward you. Its dozens of legs moving in perfect, horrifying coordination. To your left, movement in the shadows. A scorpion the size of a German shepherd emerges, its massive pincers clicking, its stinger curved and ready. You try to run, but everywhere you look, giants tower over you. This isn't a nightmare. This was Earth. Real fossils prove these creatures existed. They ruled this planet for over 300 million years, long before the first dinosaur ever drew breath. And here's what will blow your mind. Scientists have discovered that if just one thing about our planet hadn't changed, these giants might still be here today, hunting in your backyard. If you want to understand why the tiny insects around you now are actually the descendants of Earth's first true apex predators, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to discover will permanently change how you see every bug, every spider, and every creeping thing you've ever encountered. The ocean's first nightmare. Before the age of giant insects, before anything even thought about conquering land, the oceans held a monster that would haunt your dreams. Picture yourself as a tiny creature, no bigger than your thumb, crawling along the prehistoric seafloor over 500 million years ago. The Cambrian Ocean is murky, filled with bizarre life forms that look like nature's earliest experiments. Suddenly, a shadow passes overhead. You freeze. Two curved, hook-like appendages slice through the water toward you. There's no escape. Meet Arthroplura, the strange shrimp that was anything but ordinary. Stretching nearly 40 centimeters long in a world where most creatures barely reach the length of your finger, this predator was Earth's first apex killer. Its body looked like something engineered in a nightmare factory. Those terrifying front claws designed to grab and hold. A circular mouth ringed with interlocking plates that crushed shells like they were paper. And most impressive of all, compound eyes containing over 30,000 individual lenses. In an ocean still learning what sight even meant, Arthroplura could see you coming from distances that would astound modern predators. This wasn't just another sea creature. This was the blueprint, the original design for what it meant to hunt, to stalk, to kill with purpose and precision. Before fish ever existed, before sharks prowled the depths, Arthroplura had already perfected the predator's toolkit. It would glide through the water, using wave-like ripples along its body, spot a trilobite meandering below, strike with lightning speed, and vanish into the murky depths before you could blink. The ocean's first arms race had begun, and every creature that followed would be shaped by this pioneer's deadly innovation, when scorpions ruled the waves. But Arthroplura's reign couldn't last forever. Evolution never sleeps, and from the seafloor emerged something even more formidable. Fast forward to 420 million years ago, and the oceans belong to a new titan, Pterygotus, the king of sea scorpions. If you think scorpions are scary now, imagine one that could look you straight in the eye, because Pterygotus stretched over 2.5 meters long, roughly the height of an average adult. This wasn't just a bigger scorpion. This was a perfectly evolved killing machine wrapped in segmented armor as tough as steel. Those massive claws at the front weren't for show. They were precision tools tipped with curved hooks that could crush ancient fish like soda cans. And that whip-like tail? One lash could stun prey or ward off any creature foolish enough to challenge it. When Pterygotus moved across the ocean floor, it stirred up clouds of sediment like an underwater storm. Most creatures had the good sense to flee. What made Pterygotus truly remarkable was its adaptability. While it dominated the seas, fossil evidence suggests it could actually crawl onto land for brief hunting expeditions. Think about that for a moment. A 2.5-meter sea scorpion dragging itself onto prehistoric shores, extending its hunting grounds beyond the water's edge. It was a pioneer, testing the boundaries between ocean and land, carrying within its genetic code the blueprint for the terrestrial scorpions that still scuttle across deserts today. The age of aquatic dominance was reaching its peak, but the land was calling, and evolution was about to answer in spectacular fashion. The sky becomes a hunting ground. While sea scorpions patrolled the depths, something revolutionary was happening above the surface. The Carboniferous period had arrived, and with it came atmospheric conditions so perfect for giant insects that they seem almost designed by nature as an experiment. Oxygen levels soared to 35%, nearly double what we breathe today, and the world transformed into a humid, oxygen-saturated greenhouse. Towering fern forests stretched toward the sky like natural skyscrapers, and in the thick, energy-rich air between them, the first aerial predators took flight. Enter Meganeura, the prehistoric dragonfly that redefined what it meant to rule the skies. With a wingspan stretching a full meter across, imagine a dragonfly the size of a hawk. Meganeura was both beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Its 4 transparent wings hummed through the air with a sound like distant thunder, while its enormous compound eyes, containing tens of thousands of tiny lenses, missed nothing. A modern dragonfly can see you move from several feet away. Meganeura could spot prey from distances that would make a modern bird of prey jealous, but sight was just the beginning. Meganeura's entire body was built for one purpose: to hunt. When it spotted a target, perhaps another large insect fumbling through the canopy, or a small amphibian resting near water, it would fold its wings and dive. The speed was devastating. Its spiny, hook-like legs would snap shut around the victim like a bear trap, and the struggle would be over before it began. Scientists believe Meganeura was the first true aerial predator, filling an ecological role that wouldn't be matched again until birds evolved tens of millions of years later. For a brief, glorious moment in Earth's history, the skies belonged to 6-legged dragons. Alongside these aerial hunters glided another species that represented something equally important: Paleodictyoptera, the ancient giants among mayflies. With wingspans reaching 55 centimeters, larger than many modern pigeons, these creatures weren't predators, but gentle herbivores. Their bodies shimmered with iridescent scales, and they moved through the humid air with an otherworldly grace, feeding on pollen and plant sap from the earliest seed-bearing trees. What made them truly unique was their anatomy. They possessed not 2 pairs of wings like most insects, but 3. That extra pair, located on their thorax, acted as stabilizers, allowing them to hover in place like living helicopters. Picture the scene. Massive tree ferns reaching 30 meters high, their fronds creating a shadowy canopy where pale light filters through in golden shafts. Giant mayflies drift lazily between the trunks, their wings catching the light like stained glass. And then, cutting through that tranquil scene like a fighter jet, Meganeura appears. The chase is on. mayflies scattering in every direction, wings beating frantically, but few escape. This was the daily drama of the Carboniferous skies, a world so alien that if you could visit it, you'd question whether you were still on Earth. Terrors of the forest floor. While Meganeura commanded the airspace above, the forest floor belonged to creatures that would make your skin crawl. Beneath the decomposing leaves and tangled roots of prehistoric ferns, something was moving. Something with dozens of legs, armor plating along its entire body, and venomous fangs ready to strike. This was Euphoberia, the giant centipede that turned the shadowy undergrowth into its personal hunting ground. At 30 centimeters long, and some specimens reaching over half a meter, Euphoberia looked like a miniature armored tank, equipped with an unsettling number of legs. Each segment of its body bore a pair of limbs that worked in perfect coordination, propelling it across uneven terrain with surprising speed. But what truly set it apart was its defensive armor. Hard, bony ridges running along each segment, topped with sharp spines that gleamed with an almost metallic sheen. This wasn't just protection, it was a warning. Touch me, and you'll regret it. Euphoberia was a mid-level predator, which meant it lived in constant tension between hunting and being hunted. It would lurk in the shadows, antenna probing the damp air for the chemical signals of prey, perhaps a large beetle, a plump larva, or an unwary young amphibian. When it struck, those venomous claws would paralyze the victim almost instantly. But Euphoberia itself had to watch for larger threats from above and around, always ready to curl into a defensive spiral with its spiny back exposed, head protected at the center. It was a survival strategy that worked so well, modern millipedes and centipedes still use it today, hundreds of millions of years later. But the true king of the Carboniferous forest floor wasn't a centipede, it was something far more frightening. In the mist-shrouded nights, when the only light came from bioluminescent fungi dotting the decay, another predator emerged from its hiding place. Pulmonoscorpius, the giant scorpion, measured a staggering 70 centimeters from the tips of its claws to the end of its venomous tail. That's over 2 feet of armored nightmare, equipped with pincers powerful enough to crush bone, and a stinger that could deliver death in seconds. What made Pulmonoscorpius especially dangerous was its hunting style. Unlike modern scorpions that rely primarily on detecting ground vibrations, this prehistoric monster hunted by sight. Its remarkably developed eyes could track movement through the dim, filtered light of the forest, making it an active stalker rather than an ambush predator. It would patrol its territory with an eerie patience, those massive claws held ready, tail curved over its back in that iconic scorpion pose that still triggers instinctive fear in humans today. And when it found prey, maybe a giant centipede like Euphoberia or an early amphibian that ventured too far from water, the attack was swift and merciless. One strike from that tail, and the neurotoxins would do the rest. Scientists studying Pulmonoscorpius fossils have made a fascinating discovery. The structure of its claws and tail suggests it possessed venom comparable to some of the most dangerous modern scorpions. There's a rule in nature: small claws and a thick tail usually mean potent venom. Pulmonoscorpius fit that profile perfectly. But perhaps most remarkably, this giant scorpion represented an evolutionary milestone. It possessed book lungs, primitive respiratory organs that allowed it to breathe air directly, making it one of the first scorpions to live entirely on land. It was a bridge species, connecting the ancient sea scorpions of the past to the desert dwellers we know today. the gentle giant that shaped forests. Not every giant of the prehistoric world was a predator. Wandering through those same ancient forests was a creature so massive, so imposing in appearance, that you might expect it to be the apex predator of its time. Instead, it was completely harmless, a vegetarian giant that spent its days munching on fallen leaves and moss. This was Arthroplura, and at 2.7 meters long and weighing around 50 kilograms, it remains the largest land-dwelling invertebrate that ever existed. Imagine encountering this creature on a foggy morning in a Carboniferous forest. You'd hear it before you saw it, a rhythmic rustling as 30 pairs of legs moved in perfect coordination, propelling this segmented behemoth through the undergrowth. When it finally emerged from the mist, you'd be looking at something that seemed impossible, a millipede the length of a small car. Its body covered in thick chitinous plates that overlapped like medieval armor. Despite its terrifying appearance, Arthroplura was about as dangerous as a modern cow, content to graze on soft fern fronds, moss, and decaying plant matter. Fossil evidence has revealed something wonderful about Arthroplura's role in the ancient ecosystem. As this giant crawled through the forests, millions of microscopic plant spores would cling to its armor and legs, hitching a ride to new locations. When the creature eventually brushed against trees or rested in different areas, these spores would fall off and germinate, spreading plant life across vast distances. A massive armored pollinator that helped forests reproduce and expand. Nature's first gardener, tending to the very forests that provided its food. The sheer size of Arthroplura raises an obvious question. How did anything that big avoid being eaten? The answer lies in that incredible armor. Each segment was reinforced with thick chitin that no predator of the time could penetrate. Even Pulmonoscorpius with its powerful claws would find Arthroplura an impossible meal. When threatened, it likely curled up like modern millipedes do, protecting its vulnerable underside and presenting only an impenetrable wall of armor to any attacker. In a world of small amphibians and early reptiles, Arthroplura was essentially invincible, a fortress on dozens of legs. Weavers of death. While Arthroplura lumbered peacefully across the forest floor and Meganeura patrolled the skies, another predator was perfecting a hunting technique so efficient, so elegant, that it remains virtually unchanged today. The spider's web. Meet Mongol-Arachne, the giant spider of the Jurassic period, whose body measured 6 centimeters long with a leg span reaching 20 centimeters across, roughly the size of an adult human hand. Just let that sink in for a moment. A spider, the size of your hand. Now, before you close this video in horror, consider what made Mongol-Arachne truly remarkable. This wasn't just a scaled-up version of a modern spider. It was an engineering marvel of the natural world. The silk it produced was equal to, or potentially stronger than what modern spiders create, capable of stopping flying insects dead in their tracks and possibly even holding small bats or birds. Scientists studying fossilized Mongol-Arachne specimens have found evidence suggesting this spider possessed an almost frightening level of instinctive intelligence. It didn't just build webs randomly, it calculated. Mongol-Arachne would assess the environment, identify flight paths where prey was most likely to appear, and then construct its web with mathematical precision. The tension in each strand was carefully calibrated. Too tight, and the web would alert prey too early. Too loose, and victims could escape. Some researchers believe it could even throw nets like certain modern spiders do, actively casting strands to ensnare prey rather than waiting passively. This was problem-solving behavior, programmed into its tiny brain by millions of years of evolution. Like many modern spiders, Mongolorachni displayed extreme sexual dimorphism. Females were vastly larger than males. This led to a behavior that's both fascinating and horrifying: sexual cannibalism. After mating, the female would often consume her partner, using his protein-rich body to fuel the development of her eggs. It sounds brutal to us, but in nature's economy, nothing goes to waste. The male spider's final act was to become nutrition for the next generation. This behavior, refined over hundreds of millions of years, still exists in spiders today, a living fossil of ancient reproductive strategies. Empire of the ancient ants. When we think of ants today, we picture tiny creatures easily crushed underfoot, but travel back 50 million years to the forests of ancient Europe, and you'd encounter ants that would make you think twice about taking that step. Titanomyrma, the giant ant, reached body lengths of 6 centimeters with wingspans exceeding 15 centimeters. That's roughly the size of a hummingbird, but unlike hummingbirds, these weren't delicate nectar sippers. They were fierce predators with serrated jaws capable of shearing through flesh and chitin like surgical scalpels. Imagine walking through a Paleogene forest and hearing an ominous rustling in the leaf litter ahead. Suddenly, hundreds of Titanomyrma workers pour out from a hidden nest, each one the size of your thumb, their mandibles clicking menacingly. They move with terrifying coordination, surrounding prey in military-precise formations, a tactic that modern ants inherited from these ancient ancestors. When they attacked, it was over quickly. Venom injected through multiple stings would paralyze the victim, while those razor-sharp jaws dismembered it piece by piece, small enough to carry back to the colony. But Titanomyrma wasn't just a local terror, it was a pioneer of continental conquest. Fossil evidence shows these giant ants existed in both Germany and Wyoming, meaning they successfully migrated across the ancient North Atlantic when land masses were still connected through what's now Greenland. Think about the scale of that achievement. Colonies of giant ants, possibly millions strong, making a journey of thousands of kilometers across changing landscapes, establishing new nests and dominating every ecosystem they entered. They were empire builders in the truest sense, spreading their genetic legacy across continents. Yet for all their success, Titanomyrma couldn't escape the fundamental rule that doomed all the prehistoric giants. Adaptability matters more than size. When Earth's climate began cooling and the lush rainforests retreated, these massive ants found themselves in a losing battle against thermodynamics. Their large bodies required enormous amounts of energy to maintain, especially in colder temperatures. Food became scarce, and the empire of the giant ants crumbled. What survived were their smaller, more adaptable descendants, the ants we see today, still carrying in their DNA the aggressive colonial instincts and sophisticated hunting tactics of their Titanomyrma ancestors, just packaged in a form better suited to the modern world. The fall of giants. So what happened? How did a world ruled by insects the size of dogs and birds fall silent? Why don't we see dragonflies with meter-long wingspans today, or scorpions that could stare you in the face? The answer isn't a single catastrophic event, but rather a perfect storm of environmental changes that turn the giants' greatest advantages into fatal weaknesses. The key to understanding their fall lies in understanding what made them possible in the first place. Oxygen. During the Carboniferous and early Permian periods, atmospheric oxygen levels hovered around 35%, compared to today's 21%. That might not sound dramatic, but for insects, it was everything. Unlike us, insects don't have lungs. They breathe through a network of tiny tubes called tracheae that deliver oxygen directly to their tissues through passive diffusion. In our current atmosphere, this system limits how large insects can grow. Beyond a certain size, the outer parts of their bodies would suffocate. But in an oxygen-rich atmosphere, those tubes could supply much larger bodies efficiently. It was a golden age, an atmospheric sweet spot that allowed evolution to experiment with size in ways it never could before or since. Then came the collapse. Around 252 million years ago, Earth experienced what scientists call the Great Dying, the Permian-Triassic extinction event. Massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia continued for millions of years, pumping enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere. Global temperatures soared, oceans acidified, and critically for our giant insects, oxygen levels plummeted to around 15%. For creatures whose entire respiratory system depended on high oxygen concentration, this was a death sentence delivered in slow motion. Meganeura and its kin couldn't get enough oxygen to power their massive flight muscles. Arthroplura suffocated under the weight of its own armor. The giants quite literally couldn't breathe anymore. But oxygen wasn't the only problem. While insects struggled with changing atmospheric chemistry, a new wave of predators was evolving. And these predators had something the giant insects never developed: advanced intelligence and superior respiratory systems. Early reptiles, amphibians, and eventually dinosaurs possessed lungs that worked efficiently regardless of oxygen levels. They developed more sophisticated brains capable of complex hunting strategies. They were faster, smarter, and more adaptable than the lumbering giants of the Carboniferous. Picture the transition. A giant dragonfly like Meganeura, once the undisputed lord of the skies, now finding itself hunted by agile flying reptiles with sharp teeth and superior maneuverability. Arthroplura, the armored tank of the forest floor, becoming easy prey for reptilian predators that had evolved powerful jaws capable of crushing that once impenetrable armor. The hunter became the hunted, and the giants had nowhere to hide. The forests themselves were changing too. The vast coal swamps that defined the Carboniferous period, those humid wonderlands of giant ferns and primitive trees stretching tens of meters high, began to disappear as Earth's climate dried. The plant life giants like Arthroplura depended on for food vanished, replaced by more modern gymnosperms that offered less nutrition and fewer hiding places. Without their food sources and with their shelter gone, the herbivorous giants either shrank to survive on less or died out entirely. Then came the final blow: the evolution of birds and bats. These warm-blooded flying predators turned the skies from a hunting ground for giant insects into a deadly gauntlet. They were faster, more maneuverable, and capable of sustained flight in ways insects never could be. A creature like Meganeura, which once soared unopposed, became nothing more than a slow-moving meal. A prehistoric chicken wing flapping helplessly as evolution's newest apex predators claimed the airways. The world after giants. After millions of years of upheaval, Earth settled into a new equilibrium. The age of giants was over, replaced by an era of diversity, specialization, and adaptation. Modern ecology doesn't favor massive individuals. It favors millions of small ones, each filling specific niches in the web of life. The insects that survived weren't the largest or the strongest, but the most adaptable. They became smaller, more efficient, capable of surviving on less food and enduring wider temperature ranges. Look at a modern ant, barely visible, easily crushed, seemingly insignificant. But that tiny creature carries within its genes the legacy of Titanomyrma, the giant ant that once terrorized prehistoric forests. Watch a dragonfly hovering over a pond, and you're seeing evolution's refinement of Meganeura's design, optimized for our current atmosphere. The scorpion hiding under a desert rock, that meter-long nightmare of the Carboniferous night. They didn't disappear. They transformed, adapted, and in doing so, inherited the Earth. There's a profound lesson in this story, one that echoes through every era of Earth's history. It's not the strongest who survive, but those who can change. The giants fell not because they were weak, but because they were too specialized, too dependent on conditions that couldn't last forever. When the world changed, they couldn't follow. Meanwhile, their smaller cousins, the ancestors of modern insects, possessed the flexibility to endure. They could survive on less oxygen, eat different foods, tolerate colder temperatures, and hide from the new wave of predators that emerged. Echoes in stone today. All that remains of these magnificent creatures are fossils, compressed shadows in ancient stone, fragile imprints that survived hundreds of millions of years to tell us their stories. When paleontologists carefully excavate a Meganeura wing from Carboniferous rock, or discover the complete exoskeleton of an Arthroplura in a coal deposit, they're not just finding old bones. They're recovering evidence of an entire world that existed and thrived and ultimately disappeared, leaving behind only whispers in stone. But perhaps that's not entirely true. Perhaps the giants aren't as gone as we think. Every time you swat at a dragonfly on a summer evening, you're interacting with a creature whose basic body plan was perfected 300 million years ago. When a centipede scuttles across your basement floor, it's using the same segmented body design and venomous hunting strategy that Euphoberia employed in Carboniferous forests. The spiders weaving webs in your garden descended from Mongol-Arachne, building their traps with the same mathematical precision their ancient ancestor used to catch prey in Jurassic forests. The giants live on in miniature, their evolutionary innovations preserved in countless tiny bodies worldwide. And who's to say what still remains undiscovered? Earth's oceans cover more than 70% of the planet's surface, most of it unexplored. Deep-sea trenches, underwater caves, isolated freshwater lakes. These are places where ancient creatures have been known to survive, unchanged for millions of years. The coelacanth, a fish thought extinct for 66 million years, was discovered alive in 1938. Giant squid, once considered mythological, turned out to be very real. What else might be down there, waiting in the darkness? Every now and then, there are reports. Fishermen in remote areas describing massive arthropods pulled up from incredible depths. Most turn out to be misidentifications or hoaxes, but some remain unexplained. The odds are against any true prehistoric giant surviving to the present day. Conditions have changed too much, and we've explored too thoroughly, but Earth is vast, and life is tenacious in ways that continue to surprise us. What we know for certain is this: for hundreds of millions of years, insects ruled this planet in a way they never will again. The first to develop complex social structures, the first to master camouflage and venom and countless other survival strategies we now take for granted. The age of giant insects wasn't just a quirk of Earth's history, it was a crucial chapter in the story of life itself. A testing ground where evolution experimented with body plans and survival strategies that shaped everything that came after. So the next time you see an ant carrying food back to its nest, or a dragonfly hovering motionless in midair before darting away with impossible speed, take a moment to appreciate what you're really seeing. You're witnessing the refined, optimized descendants of creatures that once dominated this planet. They may be smaller now, but they're still here, still thriving, across a world that belonged entirely to them. The giants may have fallen, but their kingdom endures in every insect alive today. And that might be the most remarkable survival story of all.